Hello, Garland Nixon here. We're hanging out with our friend Kim Ives. He's the English language editor and he's a journalist over at Haiti Liberte. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here. We're hanging out with Kim Ives, a longtime friend of mine and a great activist doing all kinds of good work. Kim, welcome back.
Thanks a lot, Garland. Good to see you again.
Wonderful, wonderful. Always a pleasure. All right. He does a lot of work on Haiti, and that's great. Unfortunately, sadly, a lot of Americans don't know what's going on in Haiti. They're just like, Haiti's very poor, as if, I'll put it to you like this. If you say, well, Haiti's poor, um, in the same way that, let's say I go to an ATM and I take out $1,000 and some guy bops me over the head with a blunt object and takes my $1,000. Yeah, I'm poor. But I ain't poor of my own accord. And the U.S. has been robbing Haiti blind, as with so many other countries, U.S., France, Canada, etc. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. But before we get to Haiti, let's talk about Venezuela and your thoughts on the current threats towards Venezuela.
Well, I was invited, Haiti Liberte was invited, and I went on behalf of the paper to Venezuela at the end of July. And on July 30th, there was a conference of close to 300 overall journalists from around the world, primarily representing the global South, as the third world is now called. But there were many also from Russia, from China, from Europe and the US and Canada as well. But mostly they were from Latin America, Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. A large delegation from Palestine and from Iran. The purpose was really to push back against the disinformation that it's as if they had some sort of crystal ball to know about just the barrage of disinformation that would come with the latest U.S. assault on Venezuela, the series of provocations of shooting boats out of the water and trying all sorts of efforts to sabotage and create a military confrontation, which so far Venezuela has been very prudent and not been drawn into. But what was interesting to me, Garland, we attended this conference, which was extremely rousing and inspiring. One of the sort of showpiece speakers was Sahar Emami, the woman who people will recall when the war, the 12-day war, I guess they're calling it now, between Israel and Iran erupted, and Israel attacked the national television station of Iran, and she was in the studio and had to run for cover. So she spoke, and, an extremely courageous and eloquent woman. And she really set the tone, and I could say most of the conference was really focused on Palestine as the principal bearing the brunt of the imperialist assault in the world today. But we also took a day of touring, if I could call it that, the countryside in the country. And, the first thing I'll say, Garland, and you've probably seen this, when you go to a country which is targeted by the U.S., like Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, there's always a certain sort of shabbiness to the buildings because they can't get the paint to do them, or, there's always something which is sort of hindering their ability to develop and keep their country beautiful. Not that it isn't beautiful, but as shiny as it could be. But that was not the case that I saw. I was really very surprised when I got there that things looked pretty darn good. And I remember a conference, and I think it was in 2014 or 15, that was held at Hofstra, where Maduro came to speak, and they gave beautiful brochures of, and oil was at a high $100 a barrel, and so forth. And I remember talking to a comrade after that, and he said, "Well, yeah, it looks good right now, but the only problem is things are kind of fragile because the only thing Venezuela produces is oil. And that makes it a very fragile situation. They have to really start to get ready." And sure enough, the U.S. quickly went to the Saudis and said, "Okay, we want you to pump out 1 million barrels extra a day, bring the price of oil down." It did fall precipitously, got down to in the realm of $30 a barrel. And of course, this was a big blow to the Venezuelan economy. But the Venezuela that I saw at the end of July and beginning of August was one where they're feeding themselves completely now, Garland. 100% of the food, and it was quite a bit of food, I could say, is produced in the country, and 80% of their pharmaceuticals are produced in the country.
How was the airport when you landed there? Because I've been there since 2021, I believe it was, something like that, 2021. And when I went, the airport there was nothing. There was, if the sanctions were heavy, there was no planes taking off. There was no planes leaving. The airport was absolutely dead and shabby and nothing going on. What, was it still like that?
No, it was. There were a lot of people coming in, and I don't know if many of them were coming for this conference, but it was quite busy. Now, they were very mobilized. They have, almost, it seems, civilian security people assisting the cops in sort of screening people coming in. I was with a young kind of Anglo-looking Brazilian who was coming in, and they were giving him kind of a hard time. Maybe because of my age, I didn't set off as many alarms. But all I can say is that, I was impressed sort of with their thoroughness in treating or filtering in people. And anyway, we got through, and things were not, I can say, perfect in terms of the organization, but we stood in our circle and were eventually collected, and we got the bus and we went to the place. But the airport seemed, Garland, to be very, very busy. A lot of people. Whether we had to fly through Panama, however, I guess there are no flights direct from the U.S. to Venezuela, which I didn't know either. But we, or at least, I mean, maybe they had to do it that way for whatever purpose. But
no, you can't, because we went out of Mexico City. Some people flew out of the DR, but no, you can't. I don't think there's any domestic
direct
flights.
Wow, that's very interesting. So in any case, on this trip out to the countryside, we went to see what was called the National Coffee Mill, and this was wow. I mean, all along the road, first of all, you see hundreds and hundreds of people working, cleaning weeds, fixing, drainage. And I mean, it was a real mobilization. I don't think it was for just our benefit, but it was a really, really large squads, brigades of people with shovels and rakes and machinery. And the road looked beautiful. I mean, it was like, I don't know, the Palmetto Expressway or something. It was beautiful. The grass was cut. And all along, you see, of course, murals to the revolution, to Maduro, et cetera, et cetera. So that was very interesting. But when we got actually to the coffee mill, this place was really well organized, and it's in fact, I ended up speaking to the owner, because normally what it used to be in Cuba and Venezuela too was the state would own 51% of the shares, and they would have private investors. But they switched it because apparently they weren't running it very well. And the guy was a young Venezuelan expat who'd gone to school in the States and was, spoke English perfectly, had been living in, I think, New York and Florida, etc. But he had come back and he was really putting his back into it. He had not only that mill, but he had 8 or 9 others, and they were making this beautiful coffee, and they were explaining about all the different varieties of coffee, how you have, different beans and different roasting and da-da-da. And everybody was, really smartly dressed with their little uniforms and their hats. And they had beautiful displays where you could pick up, a bag of coffee and a T-shirt and a cap and all this. I was very impressed. But he said, they're adapting, and they realized that the 51-49 approach wasn't working. So now I own 51 and they own 49. But it was still running beautiful. An excellent rum producing plantation and a mill called 1796 Rum, and which won actually in a festival in Europe last year the best rum in the world. And again, that was also really well organized. The crew was there, the tour guides, etc. We broke away. A select group of us delegates were sort of tagged to go meet with Maduro. So we got on a special van and we said, wow, we're going to get to sit with Nicolas Maduro and talk. But it wasn't exactly that. We got to a barrio of Caracas where he was meeting the people. And what struck me there, Garland, was that he had such a minimal security corps, very small. I'll say maybe, at least from what I could estimate, maybe 10 or 15 guys, if that. And, he was sort of talking with the people, stopping, chatting. And then he did receive a Sahar Imami there and gave her a little gift. And then he went and he played some basketball with some kids down in a little thing. So, and it was all very warm, very relaxed, very Venezuelan. The people in the street after he left were kind of serving soup, trying to make us eat some soup. We were trying to work and take our pictures and do our interviews. But, they were bringing us little bowls of soup, which I did have some, which was great. Anyway, overall, I was very impressed, and above all, kind of with how together, organized, and hopeful everything seemed. And of course, a month later, we see Marco Rubio and Donald Trump starting up a real fight, trying to pick a fight with Venezuela.
Yeah. The other thing that I found interesting about Venezuela, is there's a lot of volunteer groups. When I went to different towns and they have like these, what do you call them? The suits where, it's all one color and you just zip it up in the middle. I forgot what you call it. It goes over your regular clothes.
A jumpsuit, I think.
Yeah, jumpsuit kind of thing. And a lot of people have the jumpsuit that are the, what do you call it? Where they agree to defend the country, the militias.
Yeah.
And the part of it is this, and this is what Americans don't understand. The Venezuelan people will defend their country. When you talk to them, they're adamant about that. I've told people, we will defend. These are women. Yep. We will defend our democracy. They believe in armed struggle. Mm-hmm. I don't care what the U.S. does. They never hold Venezuela because the millions of people would fight. All of the people would fight. They would all fight. You couldn't put troops in there. They would be torn to shreds. There's nothing you could do. They'd be cut to ribbons every day. Millions of people are armed. You couldn't do that. So, this idea of Trump sending 8 or 9 boats or something like that and some missiles to threaten Venezuela, can they launch some missiles and attack? Yeah, they could launch some missiles or something like that. But you can't take that country. Those people will fight you to the last man and woman.
Yep, and just recently saw a headline. It's something on the order of 8 million volunteers going into the brigades, the self-defense militias, to defend Venezuela. It reminds me of that famous saying that Fidel used to say when they were threatening to invade Cuba. He said, "You can come, but you won't leave."
Right.
So it was, interesting about, I think it was 2017, I went to a conference in Manitoba, a kind of an academic leftist, anti-imperialist conference, but it was mostly academics. And there were two speakers for Venezuela. And that was a period, maybe 2017 or 18. And that's when, things were getting really hard for Venezuela, and
real
Maduro
bad then.
was really on the ropes, and it was a special period, shall we say. And I remember the two academics who spoke. I don't remember their names, but one was a kind of a blonde British woman who lived there for years and knew Chavez and so forth. But she said, it's over. They're cooked. We're watching the end of, the end of the experiment, and it's too bad, but that's what. And then another guy got up. He was a young guy from York College. And he said, no, you got it all wrong. He said, whatever problems they're facing, this is the people's revolution. They believe in it. They know it's got shortcomings. They know it's got warts and problems, but this is theirs, and they're not letting go. So this revolution isn't going anywhere. And as time has gone by, I see he really had the right read on the situation. But I think that's exactly it. The influence of the Cuban guidance to them, and it's the same way the CDRs, the Committees for Defense of the Revolution in Cuba, if there's an invasion, everybody knows where to go for the gun cache to get the gun to fight the Yankees entering. So I think it's probably the same thing in Venezuela.
Oh, yeah. Americans, we get this propaganda. Yes. The Nicolas Maduro's a dictator. Putin's a dictator, and you may brainwash the American people.
Yeah.
But if you talk to the Russian people, I worked with Russian people, and I didn't know any of them that didn't support. Maybe a few liberals here and there, but for the most part, what do you get? 87% of the people there, and there's a reason. The reason that Vladimir Putin is because their lives are materially better before, and they looked at the 1990s and they said, we know what's bad. Mm-hmm. We know what's better. We'll take what's better. A lot of the people in Venezuela lived through U.S. occupation and neoliberalism prior to, say, Chavez and things of that nature. They know the alternative. Yep. And they'll say, no, we know the only reason we're suffering right now is because you're trying to take us out. We know the only reason we're suffering right now is because you're sanctioning us, et cetera. And we know that our only hope for a better future lies with the people here, lies with our democracy, and lies with us choosing things, not with you. So they're going to fight for what they have because they understand politically things much better than, unfortunately, poor brainwashed, propagandized Americans.
Exactly. And I remember when my mentor, the founder of Haiti Progrès, Ben Dupuy, who was a very famous Haitian communist who died in 2023 recently, and he made several trips to Caracas. As some of the listeners may recall, Aristide, after the first coup d'etat, after the 1991 coup d'etat, he, of course, had another one in 2004. But September 30th, we're coming up on the anniversary, 1991, he was couped, and they had a problem of where they're going to put him. And finally, it was Carlos Andres Perez in Venezuela, then the leader there, the president, said, you can park him here in Caracas. So he spent a few weeks, maybe it was a month or two there. And Ben went on several occasions down to Caracas. And he came back and he gave us at Haiti Progrès, that's where I worked at the time, a briefing. And he said, when you come into Caracas, it's just this bowl of mountains around it. It's just seething, and these favelas, the poor. When this place erupts, that is going to be a volcano. It's really going to be something, because I went up into some of those areas, and the people there are really seething. And sure enough, when it happened, when Chavez managed to get to power in 1999, 2000, I think that people said, yeah, we're not going back.
Well, the other thing that Chavez did that was brilliant was he set things up for the future so that the traditional methods that the imperialists use wouldn't work. I talked to some people about the military issue, because now what people are saying is, they're using the Syrian model. Well, what the government's probably going to do, it's going to buy off a bunch of military people, and that way, when they won't have to fight him. I said, it ain't going to work, because I talked to the people there. One of the things that a lot of people don't know, one of the things that Chavez did a lot, and this, a lot of these South American countries, what they'll do is, what the U.S. and Canada, et cetera, will do is, and they will set up the military academies where the indigenous people can be in the military. But all of the leadership of the military, you have to be a member of the ruling elite to go through the military academy. Mm-hmm. So if you want to be a general, a major, a captain, a commissioned officer, only members of the ruling elite, the right-wing ruling elite, are going to be in the leadership. So it's easy to buy them off, or they can just use them to overthrow the government and coup anytime they want. What Chavez did was he changed the rules so that indigenous people or anyone could now. And so basically he packed the academies, military academies, with the Chavistas, with indigenous people, Black people, descendants of slaves, etc. So now when you look at the military leadership, it's packed with people who are dedicated to the revolution. So you're not going to go in there and buy these people out. I mean, it was a brilliant long-term strategy. So the traditional games that they play are not going to work in Venezuela.
Yeah, and even in the short term, I think he did it fast enough so that 2002 coup didn't take root, even though it came mighty close. But I'm sure they accelerated things after that too. You gotta control the military. And just going back to the Haitian situation, I do recall, Ben saying that, we were in very heady days in the early days of Aristide's election. And it must be said, Aristide was really the first president of the pink tide, we could say. And it was really his election that made Hugo Chavez and Evo Morales and Rafael Correa look and say, wow, maybe we can get power through revolutions if we, make these coalitions and et cetera. So when he came in, it was just everybody said, wow, we've arrived. It's Haiti's second independence. But, Ben always said, well, you have to remember that military structure is still there. And sure enough, 8 months later, September 30th, 1991, the coup d'etat came, and that was the beginning of the descent into hell that Haiti has currently been on.
Let's move over to Haiti. The current state of affairs in Haiti, the last that I really, when I was focusing on Haiti, the U.S., Canada, France, et cetera, had put in, using the UN, had put in a puppet government. They put a leader, I can't think of his name, but I'll put it to you like this. He was the former assistant to Bill Clinton.
Right.
What's the guy?
Gary Coney. Gary Coney.
Gary, how's his last name spelled?
Conille.
Yeah, I want people to understand. To people to understand just how, if you say, oh, the Haitian government or the Haitian president or whatever.
But Coney is out. He's been kicked out.
He has?
We got a new one in.
A new puppet. He was the
prime minister, interim prime minister for a period. Well, I can.
Oh, there we go. He was the guy who served as the chief of staff to former President Bill Clinton when Clinton was the UN special. So bottom line is the U.S. government named a president for Haiti, and the president was the former chief of staff for Bill Clinton in one of Bill Clinton's endeavors. So that's all you need to know. Anyway, so where are we now?
Well, okay, just to go back, he was not, in fact, president, but the prime minister,
Prime
which is
Minister,
the
yeah.
most powerful, is the head of state. And of course, the prime minister is the head of government. So the president is supposed to appoint the prime minister. Okay, what happened, just to give the listeners the quick thumbnail, Jovenel Moise, who was the last president elected in 2016, was assassinated on July 7th, 2021, and a interim de facto prime minister called Ariel Henry took power. Ariel Henry wasn't going anywhere. He wasn't organizing elections, and the people became more and more upset. There emerged from the slums popular uprising. People have heard Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier, which we spoke about a lot on the Critical Hour back in the day, and
Yep.
I'm sure on other shows, which has become a revolutionary movement, which really is preoccupying the United States right now. At the UN, they're trying all kinds of ways. We'll get into that momentarily. But basically, it was the God-forsaken and government-forsaken neighborhoods of the capital, which basically took up arms. And for a while, they were pitted against each other, where sort of the vigilante groups, which were what Cherizier headed, and the sort of criminal organizations were fighting each other. The criminal ones were backed by the bourgeoisie. But eventually, Cherizier managed to unite them all into a front called the Vivre Ensemble, the Live Together. And they stopped fighting among each other, and they got together, and when Ariel Henry went to go get the Kenyan troops, or to sign the deal to get the Kenyan troops in 2024, February of 2024, they basically occupied the airport and said, "You're not coming back." So that happened on February 29th, 2024, exactly 20 years after Jean-Bertrand Aristide had been kidnapped by a U.S. Navy SEAL team and taken to the Central African Republic. So now Vivre Ensemble became, in a way, the de facto power. But Anthony Blinken ran to Jamaica, and in April 2023, they put in place what they call the CPT, the Transitional Presidential Council, which was made up of the entire dysfunctional Haitian political class, and therefore brought all the dysfunction of that class into the government. And they made this kind of rotating presidency where they would put a president for 6 months, and they would sort of share the presidency. We're now on the last one, and this formation, the CPT as it is called, is supposed to expire on February 7th, 2026, when elections are supposed to have been held, and they're obviously not going to be able to be held in the next 5 months. And they don't even have a presidential, an electoral council. So basically, they're hurtling towards a reef, as they would say in Creole. And Gary Coney, the guy you mentioned before, was the first one, which under U.S. prodding they more or less put in. But for the Haitian ruling group, they were, that is the ruling class, the bourgeoisie, they were not exactly happy with Coney because he wasn't really one of their sets and one of their puppets, because he also was sort of a U.S. puppet. Not that they all aren't, but, to various degrees. And they put in another guy called Alex Didier Fils-Aimé, who is the current prime minister, and hence the principal electoral power. So what is happening is that they finally managed through this CPT to get the foreign force that Ariel Henry had been trying to sign the accord to bring in, called the MSS, the Multinational Security Support Mission, which was supposed to be 2,500 troops spearheaded by the Kenyans. They were the ones who stepped up. They're the new kind of principal vassals in Africa for the U.S. Well, the whole thing couldn't fly because they couldn't get it through the UN Security Council, which is the normal way they had done the occupations in 1994 and 2004. But now China and Russia, who have a newfound weight and power, are saying, no, 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 you're not using the UN as your handmaiden anymore, Washington. And so they had to do this kind of end run where they said, okay, we're going to make this force and it'll get the benediction of the Security Council. But then countries have to contribute troops and contribute money to make it run. Well, nobody wanted to give money or troops to this thing. And so it never got to 2,500. It barely reached 1,000. And 700 of those were Kenyans. There were some Guatemalans, Salvadorians, a couple of guys from Belize, a couple of guys from Jamaica and Bahamas. So that was it. That's all they could get. They couldn't even get to 1,000. They couldn't even get to half of the force. And so the thing was a dismal failure. 3 Kenyans have been lost in action. They've lost ground, not gained ground against the so-called gangs, what we call armed neighborhood committees. And, the Vivre Ensemble is growing in strength, not just in terms of its troops, but in terms of its appeal, because the UN just did a report last week, and what they, not last week, at the beginning of August, and it said that if in April, May, and June, 76%, that is 3/4 of the innocent civilian deaths, were caused by these police and their sort of paramilitaries that they've hired. They're called the brigadiers, the brigaders. Then Eric Prince, remember him with Blackwater? He's in there with a thing called Vectis International, and they're flying drones. And so they killed 76% of the people, and absolutely no soldiers of the Vivre Ensemble. Now, the worst thing happened 3 days ago in an area called Simon-Pelé, for anybody who's familiar with Haiti. As you leave the airport and drive towards Port-au-Prince, on your right-hand side is a very poor area, and that's Simon-Pelé, which is kind of an extension of Cité Soleil. So that day there was a birthday party, not just for kind of the leader of Simon-Pelé, but it's also Jean-Jacques Dessalines' birthday. And they have lots of people out and kids, and they were, giving presents, and there were balloons. And this is the moment that this mercenary force of Eric Prince, which has been hired by Alex Didier Fils-Aimé, chose to drop some terribly lethal drones, what they call kamikaze drones, on the neighborhood, and they killed, the pictures are terrible, Garland, of, these poor kids, 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old kids, with parts missing and just bloody and dead and killed, and mothers too. They say at this point, from what we can ascertain, about 15 people were killed, 8 of them children. And this is the attack. Now, while you and I are speaking, the UN General Assembly is going, and that government has not even acknowledged this attack, much less apologized for it. And they have sent a huge delegation at great cost, mind you, up to Washington to ask for an even bigger force, because now what Trump is trying to do is get the UN to somehow pay for this force, and they want to make it bigger from 2,500, which they couldn't even get 1,000 for, to make it 5,500 with 50 civilians who would help run it. And what they're trying to do is get the funding of the UN Peacekeeping Fund to pay for it. But they can't unless it's a UN peacekeeping force dispatched and under the supervision of the Security Council, which means Russia and China are there. But they're not going to go along with this. So this thing is a stillborn. It's a comedy. If these guys weren't so terribly lethal and ruthless and dangerous, it would be comic to see this Rubio, Trump, Hegseth buffoonery going on.
Let me ask you this. At one point in my life, I was a salesman. I remember this one guy was teaching sales and how to influence people. And he said, always remember everybody listens to the same radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me? If you want to influence people, if you want to understand dynamics, cui bono, right?
Yeah.
Cui bono here. When I look at Haiti and I say the US and Canada have always been up to no good, they're after Haiti. France, the same thing. Cui bono. What is it at Haiti? Natural resources, labor, fill in the blank. Why is Haiti, that was once considered the jewel of the Nile, and now we knew that the Haitian slaves rose up and overthrew the French colonialists, an evil that can never be forgiven by the colonialists. But what is it about Haiti? Why are they so big on taking Haiti, taking everything from Haiti, and plundering Haiti?
Yes, the Pearl of the Caribbean was the actual
Okay.
no name it had back in colonial times, because Haiti produced as a colony more than the 13 English colonies in North America combined.
Wow.
So that's how fertile Haiti was for European colonialism. And that's why they have always punished Haiti for its revolution, which was the beginning. It was the very first national liberation struggle. There was nothing like it before. The 1776 revolution was a bunch of slave owners and landowners who basically did their thing. But this was self-freed slaves who made that, and who then gave Bolivar the guns, the boats, the printing presses, the soldiers to carry out the liberation of the continent. And you'll see the Haitian flag in all the flags of northern South America.
So the whole Bolivarian revolution in South America was as a result of the Haitian Revolution.
That is correct. That is correct. And ironically, when they had finally in the 1830s the conference of all the freed nations, what was the one nation that was excluded because the U.S. said, we're not going to sit with you, and if they're there? Haiti. So there you go. Haiti has always been a sort of the pioneer and the pariah. And so right now, Haiti is critical because there are only 11 countries in the world that recognize Taiwan as the legitimate China, and one of them is Haiti. And most of those nations are little micro states, Tuvalu and Dominica or something. But
with puppet governments, the puppet government that the U.S. says do this, and they'd recognize the moon if the U.S. told them to do it.
Exactly. And Haiti is one of the only countries, I think Honduras is the other, with a population of over 1 million. Haiti is 12 million people. So Haiti represents one of the few remaining countries who can be said to recognize Taiwan, because not even the U.S. recognized Taiwan as China. And then, of course, it is its strategic position, because it is on the island of Hispaniola, a neighbor to Cuba, and sharing the island with Dominican Republic. Now, after the Cuban Revolution, almost all the U.S. interests and industries and cigar making and rum making and everything went to Dominican Republic, and some to Puerto Rico, but a lot of it's in Dominican Republic. And if Dominican Republic goes, that's a big loss. And a lot of Dominican Republic, the working class of Dominican Republic, is Haiti, are Haitians. I mean, every hotel, every construction site, every tourist resort you go to, the workers carrying it out are there. So in that chain that you see on the screen, you see Cuba, Haiti, Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico. This is the belt, which is really what holds the Gulf of America, as Trump would have it, together. Because this is, the center. The rest of it are those little islands to the east, and the Bahamas to the north, Jamaica, not to lessen its importance, but, these four nations, Cuba, Haiti, Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico, are really the key. And so Haiti's right there in the middle. And if that ends up going to the dark side in the eyes of Trump and Rubio, that's a big, big problem. So they are really trying to figure out how to get in there and not get their hands dirty. Right now, what they're doing is they're putting the full court press on Canada to send troops. Now, how are they going to force Canada? Well, with their tariff blackmail. They're going to say, listen, we're going to put these tariffs if you don't send some troops to Haiti. I don't think the Canadians are going to do it, but you never know. They're also still trying to get Lula, who, sometimes seems to lose his compass, as they say in Creole. And he just gave a speech. I got a text from my daughter, saying, Haiti deserves to have a stable government. Well, it looks like the only way to get that is to have some kind of revolutionary change. And that's really what the Vivant Ensemble and Cherizier, they've been pushed more and more. They're starting to get their act together. So it's a very interesting moment. And again, this is not a revolution like Aristide's revolution of 1990, when he got political power for the first time on the part of the masses. Of course, if you don't change the economic base, the bourgeoisie just gets itself together and then they give you a coup d'etat. This is different. This is a social revolution that's in the making, where the masses are demanding to take over the means of production of the country, the land, the factories, the ports, the infrastructure. They want to radically change the way the country is run. And, the slogan they sort of have is all the riches of Haiti for everybody. If it's either going to be paradise for everybody or hell for everybody.
Wow. And this struggle, a lot of Americans don't understand, like, the history. As an example, if you could talk about this one particular thing, the United States at one point, I believe it was 1913, 1916, somewhere around there, the United States basically just sent Marines, went to Haiti, went ashore, went to their vaults, stole the gold out of the vault and took it back to New York.
Yeah, well, that was kind of the changeover from the French colonial command of the economy through a bank, the National Bank, which was kind of converted over to the Americans, or sold over to the Americans, who were more or less putting into effect the Monroe Doctrine and taking over the Caribbean for themselves. So the National Bank of Haiti was at one point in 1914 put sort of on, had a big target put on it, a bullseye put on it. And yes, Marines landed. They went down in a steamer and they marched across Port-au-Prince. They went into the bank and they took $500,000 worth of gold bars. That was a lot of money back in the day. I think it comes to like 13 million today. And they hauled it off, and it's still sitting right now in the vaults of Citibank in New York City on Wall Street. And then a couple months later, that was, I believe, September. You can read about it in Haiti Liberte. We did a 3-part piece on that whole chapter, a 3-part series. But it was on July 28th, 1915, that then the U.S. Marines landed, and they took over the entire country, and above all the ports with the customs. And they stayed there for 19 years until 1934. So that really is, I could say, the beginning of Haiti's life as a neo-colony, pure and simple, of the U.S. And that is now very much in play and very much in jeopardy.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Let me show everybody before we go. Let me find HaitiLiberte.com. Mm-hmm. This is the great site. Now, the only problem, there we go. All right. So this is, in case you've never seen HaitiLiberte.com, this is the great work that is being done there. You can see there's a teenage model defines her path, balancing schoolwork with the runway. Yeah. There we go. Different things going on at Haiti Liberte. Yeah. Haiti, revolt, violence, insurrection, or revolution. We can see all kinds of things this week in Haiti. Yeah. Right. So there's lots of stuff going on there. Did you have any comment?
We have a lot of video. Yeah. As you can see, you see a couple of English articles at the top there. Most of the paper's in French. The section This Week in Haiti that you see at the top of the screen there, That's the section of the paper that I edit. It generally is news about Haiti. Sometimes we have, sports articles and sort of community, what we call in the community pieces about various individuals, like a young model in the community that just went up today. But we have videos. We'll put actually this video, this interview, Garland, we'll put it on our site as another feature of the videos that we offer. And we have a website, a channel on YouTube where you can find our videos. If you look over if you scroll up a little, Garland, on
Right there, video.
yeah, if you come, scroll up a little bit, scroll up a little bit. Anyway, there's a video. Yeah, no, if you scroll up, on the side, if you bring the whole page up underneath there, keep going. You see right there, a little bit, go down, back down. If you can go back down. No, other way. Down a little more, right there. Stop. That is another vision. If you see on the right-hand part of the screen, part 1, that is a 3-part series that I did. We did, Haiti Liberte did, with Dan Cohen of Uncaptured Media, a very intrepid and multifaceted journalist who came down with us in 2021 to Haiti to look at the situation. We made a 2.5-hour film. We knew that most Americans would not sit and watch a 2.5-hour film, but we divided it into 3 parts, a 3-part series. So that's another vision. There are 2 other episodes following that. So there's really been 5 episodes, basically explaining about the revolution that is underway in Haiti today. And this will explain to you all the dynamics. So for people who really want to understand in all its detail the situation in Haiti today, check out that film, Another Vision.
HaitiLiberte.com. That's where you can go for more information. Thank you very much, Kim. Certainly appreciate it. These are important things in this day and age. One of the things that is quite concerning, as the Trump administration, God only knows what they're going to do, with same as the Biden administration, but they're saying, oh, well, we might have to focus more in the Western hemisphere, meaning, double down on the Monroe Doctrine. That means war, mayhem, colonialism, and imperialism, being turned up to another level in our region, and that means all the more motivation for us to push back against it and to work on behalf of the people in this region.
Yep, and I think especially with little Marco Rubio, as Trump used to call him, there he has a real obsession with Venezuela and above all Cuba. Of course, he is a second-generation Cuban. These guys are exceedingly dangerous.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you very much. And everybody, make sure you are you on Twitter or anywhere like that?
Kim Ives 13 on Twitter, and Haiti Liberte with a hyphen between the Haiti and Liberte is also on Twitter. Yeah. So follow our Twitter feeds there as well. We have I have a bit of a feed on Facebook for anybody who's still there, and we'll be happy to take any calls or entertain any suggestions through our website or through our social media.
All right. Keep up the good work. Garland Nixon here. Everybody, don't forget, thank you very much to my Patreons and all the people that do buy me a coffee and all of that stuff will keep the channel going. Got a P.O. box. Feel free if you want to send. We get letters. I get books. I just got a book recently that somebody sent me in my P.O. box. Check this out.
Wow. War Against All Puerto Ricans. There you go. I haven't heard of that book.
Little history. I don't know. Revolution and Terror in America's Colony. Somebody just sent me this. Isn't that awesome? So anyway, that's my P.O. box. People send all kinds of stuff to the P.O. box. So thank you very much, everybody. Sometimes just a donation. Sometimes just a card. Hey, I listened to you. Thank you very much. Whatever. Because there's a lot of people out here that aren't really into all of the online stuff. So I put the P.O. box there for people that just like to write a note or whatever. Thank you very much, everybody. And Kim, look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Garland. We don't have too many one-man institutions in our community of anti-imperialists, but you are definitely one of the big ones. Thanks.
Thank you very much, everybody. Make sure you share this. This is what you guys can do. We don't have MSNBC and Fox and all that stuff. What we have is all you guys and girls out there. Please share this on all your social media platforms. We're out.